Hi there, I'm Vila Loukas.
And I'm Vanessa Nova, and welcome back to another episode of the Cosmic Conduit podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about Capricorn.
There's so much here, Vanessa. I feel like I say that with every single episode, but
It's true,
right?
It's true.
It's true because what we're doing, it's like we're decoding this whole world of archetypal languaging. It's learning to speak this language of the blueprints of creation. So literally written in the stars is this whole archetypal language. And what we're doing by diving into it, exploring it, teasing it out, it's starting to understand the deeper mysteries that are contained within it.
Absolutely. And, another way I like to put that is like, we are able to see all of what's already there and actually like contain it and discern it, all of the energies, because all of these archetypes are alive in our lives. They're alive in our world, but we're not necessarily paying attention to them. So when we learn each individual archetype and what it's there to offer us, what kind of magic it has, what kind of strengths and weaknesses and shadows are there, and like how we're really playing those out in our own lives or in our own psyche, then we can actually tweak it and transform it so that we're elevating our expression of that archetype. It's so beautiful. It's so fun. And this is the magic that we're working with here, and we're enjoying it so much.
It's so true. And, just to say a little bit more about what you were just expressing, it speaks to our multidimensionality, because you can come to each one of these archetypes at a very surface level, which is kind of where we start when we go into these conversations. Like, okay, what do we know about Capricorn? And then you can kind of look at it from a number of different angles and see the different expressions and how does this play out in our lives and in the different relationships that we have with this kind of archetypal energy. So for people who may have a sun sign that's Capricorn, their relationship is going to be a little bit different than somebody like me who has zero Capricorn anywhere in my chart at all, right? So the only time I engage with this energy is when it's in the air, really, or when I specifically call it in. And then there's looking at the shadow side of it. And then there's looking at what we're doing here with the cosmic conduit as a whole, which is that up-leveling, looking at that new paradigm expression. So this new way of existing on planet Earth as humans, and how can we do these archetypes from that highest frequency arc?
I get really excited whenever we talk about the new paradigm, and I'm really, looking forward to diving into some of what we can see happening as we elevate this archetype in the world, on the planet. It could see a lot of problems. So we're going to get to that later. But for me, my Venus is in Capricorn, and though it's not one of the big three, I really, find a lot of richness in that and how it plays out in my own life. Because my relationships, which is the planet of Venus, and how I bring people and relate to people in my life, are all centered around work and building and creating something that's going to make an impact. So that kind of gives us a little segue into the energy of Capricorn, right?
Yeah. Before we go completely there, what I would love to do is just give a tiny intro for anyone who might be joining us for the very first time. So Vanessa and I are both certified guides and healers and initiated Wiccan priestesses in the Modern Mystery School, which is an international organization that is dedicated to bringing about this new paradigm, really, to offering ancient spiritual methods, techniques. I like to refer to it as ancient spiritual technology, bringing it forward into our modern world because we need it. We need it. So we get to do really cool stuff like DNA activations, and we get to do initiations onto a path of progression that helps every single individual who steps onto that path really live the truth of their unique life purpose. So it's kind of the coolest job ever that we get to do. And, we're so excited to get to introduce more of that to all of you who are watching and listening, and to invite you in to participate with us at whatever level you are called to. So more on that as we go.
Right. And you call it spiritual technology, and I call it magic, and it's really interchangeable. But I definitely believe that the world needs more magic, and that these keys to magic, to understanding our reality, to understanding how to work with our reality and create our reality, is so much needed on the planet today. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I do this work. And I'm doing this work with you in the Cosmic Conduit, is because we really have some power tools. And we really are talking, though we're talking about all of these concepts as a primer, as a way to understand archetypes and understand magic and understand these spiritual concepts. Really, ultimately, there's only so much we can do online and through a podcast. So we'd love to, have you join us both, in person for personal one-on-one work, as well as our immersion programs and classes in person. So that's also available. But in the meantime, thanks so much for listening and following along with this journey.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. So what do we know about Capricorn? So you just told us your Venus is in Capricorn, which is so intriguing. I mean, I think I love that about you, because that means we get to do all sorts of cool stuff and build together, and partnerships and relationships, as you were saying, they're built around work. So Capricorn is it's a really cool sign. I kind of didn't like it before I sort of dove into to the deeper study of it that I did over the last year. And when I really did what we were talking about at the beginning, which is to kind of see if I could decipher the code a little bit more deeply, or understand the mysteries that were presenting themselves through Capricorn, it just kind of blew my mind. So I'll just give you a little tiny example. So here behind me, perhaps you can see, I'll pick it up for us, is the tarot card associated with Capricorn, which is the Devil card. It's not particularly pleasant, right? We don't really love the devil. So, I think that's part of what kind of shaped my attitude towards Capricorn. Was it seems edgy and kind of dangerous. But when you actually dive into what's going on here, what are we actually trying to say about what this energy does or can do or has the capacity for? And then that's when all of these amazing things come forth to be understood and worked with in the world of Capricorn.
I know. I want to just side note and relate that, because you said that you had sort of this dislike or impression of Capricorn, and I think that can really happen just in general with people. It's we can have a certain negative imprint of somebody that, and it's generally coming from negative ego. It's coming from the shadow places of that person, which everyone has, right? So we can generalize about all of these archetypes based on sort of negative traits. And when we change our perspective, when we shift our perspective to see what is the beauty and the value and the gift and the gem of each archetype, and how do we express that and nurture that, then you see a completely different picture, a completely different wholeness of all of the archetypes. So
going back to one of the analogies you've used before, about the paint palette, it's like deciding you don't like the color orange, which for a long time I really didn't like orange. And I was ugh, I just don't need it. And then it's but then I'm missing out on the benefit of what's there in orange that I just haven't understood or taken in or allowed to work with me, work on me, work for me. And then as I go through whatever I have to go through in my relationship to orange, then it expands my palette. I have more to work with. I can do things like sunsets in a whole other way on my paintings, because that I couldn't do if I didn't want to use orange.
Right.
So much more we can do with our lives to enrich it when we do that work of reconciling with where there might be something out of resonance or something we need to heal within some aspect of the world of archetypes.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's something that maybe we're resisting integrating, or because it's foreign or we don't understand it, but it is part of us. So it does expand you to actually integrate these things and bring them in and apply them. So like back to Capricorn, Venus and Capricorn, like that's been my expression of Capricorn is through building things in relationship to all my partnerships are based on something that we're creating together and something that's being built to create a lasting impact.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, Capricorn can be very industrious and ambitious and driven. And I think that's like one of the things that I see the most in myself that comes from that archetype, that comes from that placement in my chart.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you see that's coming up?
Well, so the planet that rules Capricorn is Saturn. So again, Saturn is not, when you look at it, at astrology, that's not usually the one that people are like, oh, yay, Saturn, like where you are like with Venus or with Jupiter, those are kind of the more like cuddly, like, oh, goody, it's going to do something good for me. Saturn's a taskmaster. Saturn's the one that's like cracks the whip and is like, get it together. So there is that energy in Capricorn, which, is great. We can harness that. We can make things happen with it. And, we just came through Sagittarius. And so as we were saying with Sagittarius, that is the highest expression of fire energy in the zodiacal wheel. So with Capricorn, we have the highest expression of earth energy in the zodiacal wheel. So we started with Taurus, and then we did Virgo, and now we have Capricorn. So it's earth energy applied in this much more, you used the word industrious before. So it's enterprising, it's about building, it's about making lasting things come about. That's the energy of Capricorn. It has ambition, it has drive. And there's also like a natural leadership energy with Capricorn. So Capricorns don't shy away from responsibility. And that's definitely that Saturn influence, right? It's like, get to it, get to work, grab what needs to be grabbed, make it happen, be the one. And so on the positive side, that means Capricorns can make all sorts of great things happen. And then of course, when we look, more into the shadow, there's, all sorts of places where it can express in some of those ways we were talking about that feel super edgy.
Right. Well, when I think about, Capricorn as the highest expression of earth, I also think about the goat, because we do have this goat here, and it's also kind of like a horned in the devil card as well. It's like a horned being, right? So it's a goat. And I think about that goat just like climbing the mountain. So it's the earth is not even so much like down to the ground. The earth is like way up in the sky. And then there's always like this, because like, I don't know if you've ever seen those like crazy cliffs where it's like these sheer cliff faces and they're like goats just like chilling on it,
Totally.
like just chilling. so like that's what I think of. I definitely think of like that climbing and that energy of like let's sit at the top of the mountain so that we can actually see the view. But the other thing that I hope that you'll get into is that I don't really I have not much grasp on is the fact that it's like a fish-tailed goat. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, one thing I was just wanted to comment on too with that, the goat and climbing the mountain, there is a mastery that happens with Capricorn. And, and when we look at how the 12 zodiacal signs also lay out kind of with the different sort of phases of life, these last 4 are kind of like the older part of life. You've already kind of, you've gone through the beginning stages, the childhood, getting yourself grown up, and then you've kind of figured out, adult life, how to live in the world. That's the sort of middle section. And then these last 4 is kind of more the refinement. So you have with Capricorn, this eldership. So this sort of like application of the wisdom and a level of mastery in the world that, hasn't been achieved up until now. So that's kind of bringing a little completion to that piece. Yeah, so that fishtail so it's actually a sea goat. We're working with a sea goat in Capricorn, and it's kind of a whole other deeper conversation. So maybe we'll end up teasing it out, in another episode more fully. But there is this sort of like capacity that Capricorn has to dive into the depths, right? So that fishtail means it can actually go in to the more, emotional spaces, to understanding sort of the deeper need at hand from that emotional side of it, or from that like watery essence of what's true, and then bringing that forward to be climbed, and and like you were talking about with the building that happens with the goat on the mountainside. So it's kind of there's a capacity for deeper understanding that Capricorn has, which is very unique. And so it sort of ties into that eldership piece that I was talking to, or that capacity for the mastery and the leadership, really, because it means that Capricorn has the capacity to understand when that fishtail, when that more feminine side of Capricorn gets integrated and applied, because Capricorn tends to be, more masculine energy. It's about that building. It's about the put it all together. It's more that father energy. It's more the, outward direction versus, its counterpart on the axis is Cancer, which then is going to be more that feminine. So the fishtail of the goat kind of allows it to meet and match, the watery energy of Cancer on the other side.
Great. Thanks for that tip.
Yeah.
I like a little hint. So I think I'm really enjoying also, these last 4 signs in the cycle, the Sagittarius and Capricorn and Aquarius and Pisces. Like, those are the signs that are really like, they're going to carry us into the new paradigm, because there's so much more about like the greater whole and the impact and the bigger picture and the vision for, all people, of all beings, all humanity. So I love hanging out like inside and sort of these like higher expressions, because they are like more of the higher ideals. Whereas like the first round was more like about the self, and then like self in relationship to others. But then like this is even bigger scope. So yeah.
So, and the way we're going to get there to that hierarchy is really by moving through the shadow expression, right? Understanding it, and then really seeing how we can repattern it. So let's go there a little further. So, I mentioned this Devil card, right? So what we see here, is that I use the word mastery, and masterful. And here you sort of see it, in its shadow expression, right? So you see the figure of the devil himself kind of, being the master of these human slaves. But I'll go a little closer here, you can see that they have chains around their necks, but they're actually very loose chains. So the message here is that these humans are choosing to be enslaved, that they're not really being forced into slavery. They're sort of like choosing their own slavery, their own enslavement. And that's really kind of sums up the shadow expression of Capricorn, is enslavement on both sides. So there's the enslavement from the perspective of the one who's, domineering or dominating, and then the ones who choose to be dominated, right? The ones that choose to be like, oh, I'm going to give up my will for the sake of, whoever this person is, or whoever this being is, or whatever this force is, this organization, this corporation, this cause, whatever, that then I am saying I will give away my autonomy, my authority, my creativity, my quality of life in exchange for this position as a slave. Which, we think like, oh, why in the world would you want that? Yet, when we start to examine humanity, it's such a prevalent theme. It's kind of crazy.
Right. So yeah, you were saying that slavery aspect can be both like on a personal level, and then like on the flip side, somebody else being the one who is like, exploiting or taking advantage of other people. So this is something I get really, impassioned about, because I've as somebody who's been leaning into what does the new paradigm look like for a very long time, this is an area where I see, a lot of distortion and a lot of room for reform and restructuring. So like we talked about it, we've talked about it quite a bit here, like in our Cancer episode and the Cancer Capricorn episode. But like one of the ways that shows up, that slavery pattern is like, okay, like working yourself to the bone. Like
Mm.
you're not taking care of yourself to the, like, and I think it's really common to see that where your drive for success, your drive for ambition isn't balanced with a sustainability, or we're balanced with like, what do I need to do to take care of myself? So we're seeing a lot of burnout happening in the world. And then on the other side of it, like, corporations, like you said, industries have always been, about profit, about the result, about the bottom line. And that's a huge thing that we're really going to need to see restructured in the next, little phase of our evolution on the planet, because that drive for profit, ultimately has exploited people and, exploited the resources. I mean, even down to like we've exploited Mother Earth to the point where the resources are running out. And then, we're seeing this movement that I followed over the last couple of years since the pandemic. It's called the Great Resignation. So starting, during the pandemic, 2020 started happening, 2021, and then peaking even last year, 2022, 51 million people in the US quit their jobs. And that's because of, bad labor conditions, not good work-life balance, not enough pay. There's like union strikes going on with, the entertainment industry. There's all sorts of, signs that are showing this isn't sustainable. Like we need to change the way that we work, the way that we build industry, and the way that we do business.
And the way, yeah, the way we conceptualize it all, because it's definitely coming from this very, very, very old paradigm mindset. When you think about the shadow aspect of Capricorn, it really is this very, very typical, evil entrepreneur kind of archetype, that the big bad, slave driver that's has all the, that has no compassion, has no feeling, has no empathy for what, that what they're putting the workers through. And so, and the stories that we've seen, throughout history, in literature, right, you can find so many of them where it's like, then it's the hero's journey to find their way to humanize themselves, to reclaim their sense of self in the midst of this, domineering kind of enterpriser. And so, it's really when we start to turn this particular archetype around and really work with it from its productive, positive, higher arc. I mean, like, this is where we're going to truly make huge shift in the way that humanity works. And I think it's that rehumanizing, rehumanizing our quality of life. And so making it about what is it that elevates us versus what runs us down. So that you were talking about it from the perspective of burnout, but you can also consider it as like, mediocrity, right? What's the lowest common denominator versus rising up and claiming the crown. We work with the Universal Kabbalah, and that, all of that work towards claiming your own divinity, claiming the royalty that is your birthright. That's about finding your uniqueness, highlighting it, and elevating yourself to it. So embedded in Capricorn, you can see in this image, all of that is there. And it's just, we have to move through the shadow of this archetype to get there, to really claim that crown.
Yeah, well, like we really do need to like break free.
Yes.
So like there, the chains are there. And like I think that part of that also is just like lack. It's this like conditioning about lack. And that's like one thing that needs to change, both in industry and both like even within like something that you and I have been exploring and talking about is like this feminine rhythm of working. And, like, I think even for me, like with this drive that I have to like succeed, to create, to see results, you know, and to be the best that I can be. Like that's not a bad thing. Those are, you know, great qualities to have, but that's masculine, right? It's like too much drive
Yeah.
without the rest. And like, even for me, challenging myself to like find this new rhythm of where I'm like, okay, I'm resting. I'm doesn't look like I'm producing anything right now. I'm not doing anything, but still knowing and trusting and having, you know, in my value, and that like this is part of the rhythm, and recalibrating myself to a new way.
Yes. And with that, also embedded in this archetype is overcoming the illusion, and so with any of the earth signs, there is that tendency to focus on the material. And so as you were talking about lack and, this mindset, there's and the attachment to it, that's the other thing we see in that devil card is, the chains represent the attachment, and the human's willingness to keep those chains on is being attached to the illusion of finite reality. you know it's not finite. Reality is infinite, and abundance is infinite, and flow is infinite. And so when we can break free, like you said, break out of those chains of illusion and the attachments we have to what we think we understand, and really move beyond it, that's where that, this level of that eldership, that truth of understanding, which even, when you look at it from that time of life, if Capricorn kind of represents, coming to older age, this would be looking towards the end of life, and like, what is true value? What is truly valuable for me as a human being in this lifetime, such that I want to have some kind of legacy to leave for myself, something I would like to have built, in regard to, what I leave when I
Mm,
go on from here.
yeah, good point. Because like that building, all of the building has to lead towards something. It has to have something lasting that you leave behind.
So let's talk a little bit more about our new paradigm expression then here that we have in Capricorn. So that's optimized outcomes. Vanessa, what's that about?
Well, I looked up recently just what does optimize mean, and you know, the definition is it's making the most efficient use of resources. And I think that this is such a huge key because, again, like talking about lack or talking about the way we've been conceptualizing business or growth or progression or success, like it's like it has to come at a sacrifice, at a cost, or it has to like take something from others. So, you know, in that example of industry, or even just like the way we're looking at corporations or paying and profit and all paying our, for example, like a business that pays employees. So, you know, your labor cost is a very large portion of your expenses. And so the idea there is, of course, like, you know, traditional economics, if you pay the people less, then you're going to make more profit. But we need to flip that whole thing around, because in the new paradigm, as we're moving forward, if we look at like this bigger, greater whole, and that, yes, you know, that makes sense on paper and it makes sense, you know, with economics, but we're looking at ourselves as like not finite, right? Like we're infinite beings, we're connected. The whole thing is an organism as a business. So if you're actually nourishing your employees and paying them a living wage so that they can live a good life, enjoy, and have the things that they need to like have quality of life, then the whole organism is going to thrive. And that is something that like is really hard to even you know, grasp, because it's like, you know, in that illusion of the physicality, that's what makes sense. And that same thing is applied like when we're thinking about our own work, our own business. Like if you work yourself to the bone, or just do some more overtime, or work through the night, then you're going to make more progress, you're going to make more money, you're going to have more success. But in truth, you know, I've seen it put this way: it's you're borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today, and then ultimately it's not sustainable. You're going to get to a deficit at some point.
Yeah.
So coming from this higher place of, you know, looking at the integrated whole of what is needed on all levels, not just for profit, not just for success, not just for building, but for sustainability and for fulfillment. I mean, perhaps even for joy, for peace, for the good of humanity. When you optimize all of those things, the outcome is going to be even greater than what you could imagine.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Just yes to everything you're saying. It's so, I mean, you just nailed it all. And I think it's so important, and they've been doing these studies, over the last however many years around like, you know, studies on happiness, the science of happiness, right? So like how much more productive are humans when we're happy? How much more can we get done? Even in the school systems, right? Learning through play versus learning through like discipline. And, it's a flip of this narrative that we've had around work hard, do things, but, like harm yourself for the better good, right? For the ultimate goal of the profit or the outcome that you think you want. Whereas this optimized outcome is saying, no, we need to look at the bigger picture, like you were saying, that organism, the whole, and optimize the whole. And that's how we're going to get there. So the outcome is not a single thing. It's not one number. It's not one goal. It's not one profit. It's not one product. It's the greater whole and moving there together in an optimized way. So that may mean it's a little slower to begin with, right? To optimize something takes time. You have to like dial it in. You have to, perhaps experiment a little bit. What does give us the most efficient approach here? Or what is, the highest return on our investment in this one particular area? And then looking at that in multiple areas and then coming around to all of it together. So it's definitely an investment at a different level. It's not as transactional. It's not as again, sort of masculine. It's more of a feminine approach because it's looking at the organism and the complexity of all of the different factors instead of, the bottom line, so to speak.
Oh, this is so rich. Yeah. I mean, it's not linear, and it's not gonna happen, like it's not gonna give us those immediate results that we're so used to.
Right.
And so I'm seeing that even in my own life where I'm like restructuring everything, but it's like I have to have a lot of patience in that, even just like nature, you plant a seed and you're not gonna immediately see the blossoms. You're not gonna see the fruit. Like it's sometimes gonna be underground for quite a while before you even see that shoot come out of the soil. So, I'm totally in that process of seeing that change within myself. And then, like as you were talking, I was really seeing we are, here's my prediction. Like it's already happening, but we're gonna need to see a complete shift around our rhythms and how we spend our time and work-life balance and all of these things, because the way that the 5-day work week, the 8-hour day, like all of that comes from the Industrial Revolution. And it all comes from a time when it was all about industry and growth and like this very very driven Capricornian time of let's change the world. And yes, we needed those things to happen so that we can have all of the different kinds of technologies and resources and industries that we have today. But we're going into the future in a different way with different needs and with different kinds of resources that are also like, can be limited and also need to be, optimized. We need to be able to have efficient systems that really honor the resources that are involved.
I love your passion on this topic, Vanessa. It's so good. So I would love to have all of you listening, come join us for our live ceremony that we're going to be doing with the new moon for Capricorn. We're going to be working with these themes specifically. And I love, Vanessa, that you talked about planting of the seeds, because at this time of year, you know, we're at the deep dark of the winter, right? The winter solstice, the time of Yule. And so this is where the seeds are underground. And this is where that magic gets to happen around new life, new blossoms, new capacity coming forth. So we will be working with all of these themes in our upcoming ceremony. You can find the links and the information. Join us in our University for the Soul online network. And then inside that network, we have our Cosmic Conduit monthly ceremonies that are happening live. And we'd absolutely love to have you join us.
Come do magic with us. Yeah, we would love that. And, you know, there's other ways to work with us as well. Like, as I mentioned, you know, we teach classes and immersion programs at various locations. So we would love to have you join us for our next immersion. You know, just look into the links and you will find all the details. You can join us for 5 days and really immerse into, you know, raising your vibration and creating a container for all of these archetypes to live within you in the most brilliant way possible.
Absolutely. So please check it out, subscribe, follow our next episode on the podcast, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks.